Kiddush and Hamotzi. Let's bring up the content. There we go. Alrighty, so we're learning the laws of Kiddush. So the Kitzur says, the Shulchan Aruch says like this in law number 4. So law number, are we holding law number 4? I think a little further. Yes. Sorry, we're holding law number 11 and 12. So he says, the Kitzur says like this: Al hayayin shebetei chasuda. If one is to continue to drink wine after you made Kiddush, so there's again this the order is that we make the Kiddush and then we wash and we eat the bread, which is kind of the main food of the meal and elevates the entire meal. Therefore, there's no requirement for blessings on any of the particular foods. If you make a blessing on bread, that's the halacha. That's true not just on Shabbos, that's through the week as well. If you wash to a meal, then the bread is the superior of all the foods, and therefore its blessing includes all the other foods to follow. So what happens but we make Kiddush, wine is special because grapes is unique. If you were to drink wine in the middle of a meal on a regular day, or even on Shabbos, if you didn't make Kiddush and you didn't make hagafen, so if you want to drink wine in the middle of a meal, you'll still make the Boer Pri Hagafen even if you washed. But what here in this case, you made a bracha on wine by the Kiddush, but now it's after the Hamotzi. Do you have to make another hagafen? So he says, Al yayin shebetei chasuda ein tzarich levarach. Once you make Kiddush, you do not have to make another hagafen after you wash. Why? Because the suda is the washing, the meal. Shenifta bebirchas boyer pri hagafen shebekiddush. Because the bracha you made of gafen on Kiddush, even though it's before the suda is again is the washing. Nevertheless, it includes the wine to be drinking afterwards. Again, we spoke last week that if one is to bring a quality bottle of wine, upgrade the wine, so one can make, hey Ariel and Aaron, one can make the blessing of a Tova Meitiv, it's brought down, but the actual requirement of making a blessing on wine, and those of us, I think everyone here joined our class last night on the Gemara of the importance of making a bracha. So now we're much more careful since yesterday, although we were always careful, but a little more careful now, knowing that the responsibility of making a bracha. So the halacha is, nevertheless, we do not make a bracha on the wine in the middle of the meal if we made the Kiddush. Okay, law number 12. Kiddush ala kais, you made Kiddush. This is a little bit similar, I think, to Aaron. You asked us last week about making Kiddush on vinegary wine. So Kiddush ala kais, savar shu yain. You made Kiddush on a substance, assuming it was wine. However that happened is not important. I mean, what I mean to say by that is the question is obviously what level of negligence was involved. It turns out that it wasn't wine; it was in fact water in your becher, right, in your kos, or sharmashka, or other liquids. So what is the halacha? What do you do then? You made Kiddush, and then when you drank it, it was water. So the halacha is yachzor v'yikadesh al hayayin. You have to again go and make Kiddush again on wine. However, let's say there was clearly a bottle of wine on the table with intent to drink it. And just that you thought the wine in your cup was, the liquid in your cup was wine and it was water. And it wasn't just that you had a bottle of wine. You see, here's the stipulated. There's an issue. Not everyone, a lot of people, won't drink wine during a meal, right? So even though you have the wine on the table, doesn't mean you're going to drink the wine in the meal. The wine was there for Kiddush. But if the wine is on the table and you do have intention, did you continue to drink the wine throughout the meal, and it turns out the liquid inside your cup was water? Then in that case you do not have to make Kiddush again. Why? That's considered Kiddush and wine. So even though the wine isn't in your hand, i.e. the cup that's in your hand, but you made a hagafen to drink wine, and your intention is to drink wine throughout the meal. So as far as Kiddush and wine, the Kiddush is the wine in the bottle is as if you made Kiddush on the wine because you did the bracha of Kiddush. Now, there's two things here. that have to be addressed. One is, did you do Kiddush? Kiddush, again, is to sanctify the day of Shabbos through the Kiddush process, blessing, which is the Yom HaShishi and then the Brach of Shabbos. We do it, we have to sanctify the day because wine is an important is the most important of the liquids that we drink. So we to make it a special experience of sanctifying the day, we do it preferably on wine. So the question is like this: you have a liquid in your cup, thinking you're sanctifying the day with wine. It's water, but there's a bottle of wine on the table that you plan on drinking. So therefore, it's considered as if, hold on, Aaron, as if you sanctified the day through the Kiddush with the wine that's on the table that you're going to drink later. He doesn't address the question if you have to make a guffin a second time after you drink when you want to drink the wine during the meal, because there's a big separation, or it doesn't say if you should right away drink some wine right now. But let's see again. However, Aaron, we're going to get to your question in a second. If there was no wine on the table, you still have wine at home somewhere in your cupboard, with the intention to, after the meal starts, bring the wine to the table and drink from it. So here he tells us, you don't have to make the hagafen, because the hagafen you made on the Kiddush / water will cover that, even though you didn't drink it right away. But you do have to make the Kiddush again, because there was no Kiddush. When you said the Kiddush, there was no wine that you made Kiddush on. The idea that there's wine in a cupboard that you're going to maybe bring out doesn't cover the sanctification of the day on wine, but it does cover the blessing you made on wine to be applied to the wine you'll drink during the meal. Okay, let's stop here. Aaron, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. I'm not talking about price. I'm talking, there's red wine, and you enjoy everyone enjoys their own type of wine, but let's go. Red wine, blush, which is a mix. There's bubbly, there's ones with bubbles in it. All these wines. Is there a hierarchy of wine, meaning what is the best wine to use for this blessing, and what is the wine you try to avoid? And we're not talking vinegary wine, bad wines. I'm talking just in general.
We discussed this. This was last week's class. Last week's class, we said clearly that one should use red wine.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter what kind of red wine, as long as it's red in color.
Well, we did learn that's better to use mevushal, to use non-mevushal wine, non-cooked wine.
Oh, I got you.
Remember that? Because that's the wine that was kosher for the mizbeach. Again, if you only have white wine, or if you can't drink red wine, some people can't drink red wine for the there's, what is it called? They have in the red wine a certain
I don't know.
That some people can't drink. So then that's something different. Yes, Barbara.
I was just going to say, and Rebecca just joined, I think this was Rebecca's question last week, was that if, let's say you're not drinking wine and there's wine on the table, there's no need to make the blessing again, the Kiddush blessing again, the Baruch Hu Hagafen, because the wine's already been on the table and it's blessed, even though you at the time you didn't have the attention, but somebody offers you wine, you're still covered. That blessing still covers that wine. Am I understanding correct?
In the case of listen, if you're listening to Kiddush and someone gives you a little bit of wine, you do not have to make a guffin on the wine, because the person's made the blessing for you. If you're listening to Kiddush and the person makes a blessing on the wine, and you have intention to drink wine during the meal, I have to check again. My memory is a little foggy this early. I think you still would make a blessing, because the blessing of the wine that was made on the Kiddush has nothing to do with your drinking the wine. But if you didn't have intention, then for sure you have to make a blessing on the wine, because you were just listening to the Kiddush, to the sanctification of the day, and now that you decided to drink wine, it's a new decision. Here, what we're saying is, in our case, we're talking about the same person. The person who's making the blessing of Kiddush turns out what's in their cup, his or her cup, is another liquid, let's say water. And so if you have the bottle of wine on the table with intention to drink, so then you don't have to make Kiddush or Hagafen. if you have wine in the house, not on the table, and you have intention to drink, so then you don't have to make a guffin again because you had intention to drink wine at the meal and you made a hagafen. However, you do have to make the Kiddush again.
Okay.
But in the case where someone else made the blessing on the Kiddush, you don't drink the wine by the Kiddush. If you drink the wine by the Kiddush, then you're covered because they made the blessing for the wine for you. But if they're making a blessing on the wine and you had no intention to drink wine throughout the meal, now you decide to have intention, then I'm not sure that the person, you weren't looking to be mitzi, the drinking of the wine, you were only looking to be mitzi, to that the person should have you in mind for the sanctification of the day. But if you had no intention to drink the wine later, and now you decided to drink wine, or let's say wine came to the table that you like, etc., so that's different than if you had intention to drink wine, you just didn't drink the wine of the Kiddush.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Aaron.
Okay, talking about wine, you mentioned about, you got wine and then you found out it was water. You don't want to make the blessing on water or on rancid wine, or you want to make it on the best wine. So is there a way to check your bottle before you make the blessing? Can you take a sip? Can you take a lick? You want to make sure it's proper.
Better not to do that. We don't to mess around. We want to make sure the wine is clean in your cup, and when you put your finger and all that, it's pogea. It could
But
damage.
can you put a third? Let's say you take a separate cup that you're not going to use, and you just pour a little bit, like they do at a restaurant, and they want you to try it to see if you like it. Can you do that?
In general, in general, the laws of tasting, a cook who's tasting their batter or what have you, just for checking the quality of the food, doesn't have to make a blessing. It's not called brichas hanenim. Brichas hanenim is we're, like we learned in yesterday's Gemara shir, you're taking pleasure from here. It's like it's a technical part of the process of preparing the food. It's not that you're sitting down and saying, unless we're not talking about a person who likes to finish off the cookie batter. I'm talking about if you're just tasting it to see if there's too much salt or what have you, or if it's properly. So if you're going to stick your pinky in and just taste the quality of the wine, you wouldn't have to make a blessing for that. No. Okay,
thank you.
So now he continues. So we said before you wanted to make Kiddush on wine, and it turns out that there's water or other liquids, let's say juices, not special liquids. However, if the cup that you thought was wine was beer or made dvash, is a kind of a med, is a kind of honey water, ma'ed it's called. Again, a kind of like upgraded drink, so to say. We have the famous idea of chomer medina. Chomer medina means that if it's an accepted beverage, but not just a beverage, but a quality beverage, not just something Coca-Cola, for instance, we make havdalah on chomer medina, but that doesn't apply to Coca-Cola. It's not about the number of sales you have, but it's considered a quality drink. Beer is considered a quality drink. In some places, tea and coffee is, but not not sodas or seltzers or sprinkled waters, all that. In that case, the chomer medina is enough of a quality liquid drink that you sanctify the day on something that's, again, the idea is that when you sanctify the day, it should be with a respectable, preferably wine. You make it on the coast of the wine. But if it's not wine and it turns out to be beer or something else that's of a quality drink, a chomer medina it's called, so then you're yotze the Kiddush. Then you make the shahakal and you drink. Okay. And which is what we do a lot of times in Avdal. Hey, Danny. I just want to say one thing is that when I said before about juices, if I'm not mistaken, there are some opinions that hold that the orange juice is a chomer medina. I've heard that before. Okay, in the places that people make kiddush on the bread after they wash, before they break the bread. So in the case, there must be a custom where people, what they do is they wash their hands, they make kiddush on wine, then they break the bread. So after they wash their hands. So in such a case, So where you find that the liquid is not the wine, so then you could just use you already prepared for the bread. So just make the hamaitzi and the kiddush. The bread kind of is the attached food to sanctify the day of Shabbos. Okay. So you have a kiddush al pas. The bread takes the place of, let's say, the wine on the table. Let's do the footnotes here. Footnote number 44 is just the reference of opinion. Also here, 45. Let's see, 46 is Chai Adam, and 47. So it doesn't get into any of the technical laws over here. Okay. So so basically in a case where you have a liquid that you thought was wine, it's not wine. So to break down the halacha, if you have no wine on the table, no intention to drink wine, so you have to make kiddush again because the kiddush has to be on something that's special. And here it's water or a common drink that's not a chomer medina. If you have wine on the table and plan on drinking it during the meal, so then you don't have to do anything. You don't have to make kiddush or hagafen again. If you have wine somewhere in the house nearby, and you have plans to drink the wine eventually at the table, you don't have to make hagafen again, but you have to make kiddush again. If you have, if it turns out to be a chomer medina, if it turns out to be a quality liquid, so that covers the sanctification of the day on something that's not common. And if you're doing the kiddush in a way that's ripe, if you've already washed, prepared to make a motzi after the kiddush, so then the bread will be there as if you made the kiddush on the bread, and therefore you sanctify the day with something of importance. Okay, let's continue. It says like this. Also by day, meaning not just Friday night, Besudas Shachris in the morning meal. A person has to sanctify the day on a kois, on a cup, meaning to send a cup of wine, preferably, or grape juice. You have to make a gafin. He says clearly, that's the kiddush. Means you make kiddush. We don't have the same bracha that we have by night, which is a whole blessing. What is the kiddush by day? Is the bar gafen and wine that sanctifies the day. Although we have the things that we say before the kiddush, the Mizmor David, the parts of the Zohar. We say Al Kain Beirach, we say Zachar Shem Shabbos Akadro. But the kiddush, he says, the kiddush is the hagafen that you say on by day. Okay, hold on. Yes, Aaron. Now I do not hear you. We don't hear you. Okay, fix your microphone, and then we'll come back to you at the end of the law. This is not. Sometimes women think that kiddush of the day is something of leniency, and they don't have to keep kiddush. Possibly they don't go to shul. They maybe not davening the regular time. I think Rebecca, you asked this question last week. The Rebbe said, the Shulchan Aruch says, "Gam nashim chayav kiddush." That women have to also hear the day kiddush. V'gam koidim hakiddush, and also before this kiddush of the morning, aser litoim klum. One cannot taste any food. Ba'afilu mayim. One should not even drink water before they've heard kiddush. Again, kiddush could be made by both the women themselves can make kiddush. You take a glass of wine or grape juice, the min of the revius, drink a malay lugmov, say boy pregafen, that is kiddush. Kamay be kiddush halayla is no different than kiddush in the evening. Mitzvah min hamufchar, and it's preferably sheyi kiddush gamkin al yain dafka, to try to do it specifically on wine and not something else. So again, what the Kitzur is trying to point out is the importance of not try to make loose the kiddush of the day. Now comes the famous question, which we're going to get to in a second. First, we'll finish the law, get to your questions, and we'll get to this question, the Kiddush Club question. If a person likes strong wine, which is a reference to alcohol like whiskey or scotch or vodka, you'd like to make kiddush on that by day. It doesn't by night, we can't, but by day. You could do it with yain saraf. Here he has the big problem. He says that doesn't help you with the size. You have to still make it on a revius. A revius, we said, is or 2 point something ounces, not a shot glass. A shot glass, I think, is an ounce. So we're going to get to the question of everyone who's been to a Kiddush club knows that a lot of people make Kiddush on whiskey on Shabbos day, and it's a tiny cup that's definitely not a revius. So what's the rule then? So and again, if you want to have a strong scotch, you can't just take a sip. You have to drink malay lugmav. You have to drink the same amount you have to drink a night, which is a proper gulp, which we said is the amount that fills one of your cheeks. Believe hefsek, and not to drink it, sip here and there. You have to drink it down, take a shot like you would drink the wine. What happens if you make Kiddush on wine, but you also want to drink a scotch or coffee afterwards? That will be discussed in laws in Siman Mem Tes. Okay. Before you get to the questions, I just Rebecca and Aaron's questions. There is the question of the idea of like the OU has. He goes into the Kiddush on beverages other than wine. So he has a whole essay over here. Okay, he starts off with the whole moral question about the Kiddush Club, if that's a good thing in communities where it teaches kids to drink young. So I'm not going to get into all that, but he does address the question of the size. Because today, if you're going to go to any Kiddush Club, no one's pouring revius. They can't. The Kiddush Club doesn't have a budget for that, and people are not taking those kind of shots of whiskey for Kiddush. Everyone makes Kiddush on less of revius. Not everyone. So a lot of people are making Kiddush on less than revius on strong alcohol. And the question is, what's the yesod for that? We just learned the Kitzur says it must be a revius, and you have to take malay lugmav. You have to take a full cheek through swallow, and you can't sip it. So he finds. So though the Shulchan Aruch says that, he says there is. I think he says there's a taz. There's a taz that says the Mishnah Brewer. It seems like from the Mishnah Brewer you have to drink. Again, if you go to most Kiddush clubs in any in any of the Young Israels or what have you. People are not drinking Chabad. Chabad doesn't have that custom. Chabad will not make Kiddush on less than a revius, even if it's alcohol. If you want to make Kiddush on whiskey, it has to be on a revius, and you have to do malay lugmav. You have to drink. We don't make a difference between whiskey and wine. But that's Chabad. I don't think there's anyone else who's careful with that. So he does say that there's a Taz. I think he brings down. He goes into. The stringent view of the Mishnah Brewers clearly rules that the measure is revius, like we said. This is the opinion of the Taz says that although normally one must drink a revius, any drink, in order to be required to recite a bracha achroina, one need not drink a revius of liquor to require bracha achroina. So we have a Taz who doesn't go into the question of the Kiddush Club. He goes into the question of a bracha achroina, the blessing we make after you eat or drink. So we have to eat a certain amount to make a bracha achroina. So usually you have to drink a revius to make a bracha achroina. If you take a sip of something, you have to make a first bracha, but you don't have to make a bracha achroina. You didn't drink enough. But in alcohol, because it's a quality drink, even in a shot, so then you do make a bracha achroina. Based on that taz, people use that you can also make the kiddush on that amount because basically Scotch upgrades in the amount of alcohol or what have you to make it as if it's a revius. Aaron, we'll get to you in a second. Rebecca, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah, hi. I wanted to know from what time of day, from what time of like what part of the morning does the chiyuv of Kiddush go into effect? Because like I thought that you don't the obligation to make Kiddush kicks in like after your minyan finishes Shacharis. But like let's say you woke up and wanted to eat before that, then are you supposed to make Kiddush at like 6 in the morning or not?
Okay, yeah, so that's a very, very good question. And we know clearly we don't, that's not the halacha. We don't make a person, people eat coffee, breakfast. There are people who are makbid not to taste anything before Kiddush or not to taste anything before the daven at all. But in Chabad, we do definitely have mezainas. You don't eat bread before Kiddush, but we do eat and definitely drink. So the question about what you're asking is, and then let's say you're running your own schedule. You're not going to shul, you're davening at home.
Right.
So again, in such a situation, if you have a set time that you daven, and you daven like pretty much the first thing once you kind of organize your morning, let's say you have your coffee and your breakfast and you read something, learn something, each person according to what they do on Shabbos. I'm not going to get into that. and then that's the time you start to get ready to daven. Then you should probably not drink past that until you've daven and made Kiddush. Usually the idea is once you've done Shacharis, then you have to do Kiddush. But if you're a person that's going to daven when you have time, anytime before nightfall, so then you should definitely try to hear Kiddush at a normal regular time of when you would start eating your so to say morning after your brunch lunch. So like
But
if you're not going to if you're not going to end up davening Shacharis until later, because women don't have an obligation to daven on time, but you do have to say Shema. You do have to. So then you would be. So then that's that. You to eat a whole day and then just daven and then make Kiddush later. Again, technically you can do it, but I think it's probably better to make Kiddush when, so to say, your schedule would be to start the Shabbos.
well, let's say somebody is eating it. I mean, let's say it's like 7 in the morning, and the shul they go to didn't start Shacharis yet.
No,
Like,
you don't
are
have
they?
to be absolutely do not make it that you have a drink. That's not
But
100%.
then you could have mazonos.
Again, it depends on your minhag. Chabad does do mazonis before davening.
So, but did you say Chabad eats mazonos before Kiddush?
Yes, on Shabbos, yes. I mean, not once you've davened, then we don't drink anything. But Chabad is not makbid to not eat mazonis before davening. There's an idea of not eating before davening. It's not a question of Kiddush. There's a question of eating before davening. There's an idea that you're not supposed to eat before davening because you can't elevate the food before you daven. That's a Hasidic idea. But at the same time, there's a halacha. We don't eat before you take care of yourself. You daven. But however, that said, Chabad is not makbid, and not only not makbid. Sorry, today is again the Rebbe's birthday.
Yeah.
So it's just a story that if it's a story that you could tell. So even though we're on YouTube, it's not a hidden story. The Rebbe's sukkah was in the front yard of 770. Whoever's been 770, and I think it was the early years. The Rebbe walked out to the sukkah Shabbos or Yom Tov before davening, with a coffee and cake in his hand to go into the sukkah to make a mezainis and a leishav b'sukkah before davening. And my great grandfather, Reb Shmuel, his name was Reb Shmuel Levitin, was a big chassid. He was also the Rav of the house of the Rebbe. So he made a comment to the Rebbe, but for Hesia, are you doing this publicly that you're bringing mezainis into the sukkah before davening? So the Rebbe responded, Reb Shmuel, with the Chabad minhag, you don't have to be embarrassed. It means you don't try to hide it. This is our minhag. This is our minhag. But clearly, then that's the Chabad minhag. But other people will not eat mezainis before davening. So it depends on your minhag. Aaron, you wanted to ask something?
Okay, I'll ask my question after because you brought up some good points. So I just tell her what me and my son do. So my son won't eat any bread before. He usually drinks a chocolate milk, and then he goes to shul. Okay, every day, even Shabbos. And then he goes to shul, prays, and then he eats. Me, I eat a bowl of cereal, and I drink a coffee. We don't eat any bread, but I go to on Shabbos, I go to Mishnayos class, and then we start Shabbos services, and the other people don't go to class, then start checking in and praying. But my question is that when I say the blessings for the wine on Shabbos night, on Friday, I stand, and in the afternoon on Saturday, I sit, and I wanted to know why, and is that really the proper way? I just don't understand it, but we do it.
Say that again.
Okay, so when I pray on Friday
When you make the Kiddush on Friday night,
I stand. And when
okay.
we make the Kiddush on Saturday, we make sure we sit. Like if someone's standing, we say, no, you have to sit. It's the lunch.
Again, there's different minhagim. The Rebbe sat when he made Kiddush. My father's custom was to stand because his grandfather, again,
Both of them did for both Kiddushes?
So the Rebbe stood Friday night and sat Shabbos day.
All right, that's what we do.
Yes, but my father stands both because his grandfather, who was stood by day as well. Again, this is the same Reb Shmuel who commented to the Rebbe. So he keeps the family custom, but the Rebbe did sit for Shabbos day.
So there's no reason behind it, or there is?
It's because there's the Friday night is there's Hasidic reasons and halachic reasons about the Makom Suda. Maybe we're
Okay.
going to get to it soon.
Okay, thank you.
Before we continue, Barbara wanted to ask something.
Yeah, if you could just clarify some of the terms that you were using, because so what I'm understanding is like my shul doesn't start services until 10 a.m.
Yes.
And I get up at like 7. So that's a while to go. And I mean, and I do say some of my prayers before I go to shul, but I don't eat until after I have said like the 18 blessings. The first, so am I doing that right, or what should I be
Yes,
doing?
yes. No. You're doing absolutely right. You can have your coffee. Again, you could even have some mazonis. Mazonis means cake. Liquids, cereal, that's fine. Piece of fish, salad. We try not to eat too much before we daven, but if you need to, especially for energy or for medicines or what have you, absolutely. Then you would go to shul and you do the kiddush. You're doing everything right. I just want to say there was a rebbitzin. You're talking about women. There was a rebbitzin. One of the wives of the rabbis, meaning to say the previous rabbis. I think it was the rebbitzin Rivka. I think her husband was Reb Shmuel, the fourth Rabbi Chabad. So her father-in-law was the Tzemach Tzedek, was the third Rabbi, whose yahrzeit actually is coming up tomorrow night. So the doctors instructed her that she has to eat early in the morning for some sort of health reasons. So what she was doing was she was waking up early. She did not eat anything before she davened. She had her own customs. She was a very righteous woman. I think she wore tzitzis. She's one of in the Chabad dynasty. She's the source of a lot of information that we have that's passed down to us in tradition of Chabad, which we know from the previous Rabbi. It was his grandmother. A lot of it he heard from her. The Rebbitzin Rivka was the source of information to the previous Rabbi, her grandson, about a lot of the stories of the previous Rabbi's memoirs, of all these stories. That a lot of that tradition came down from her and from her son, the Raza, and his father as well. But either way, she was instructed not to eat to eat early. So she was waking up very early to daven and then eat, because she didn't want to eat before she davened. Her father-in-law heard about it, the Tzemach Tzedek, and called her in and said that notwithstanding of your being strict, but it's better to daven after you eat than to eat before you davening, because then you're basically davening for the food. Like you're rushing, you're not concentrating because your doctor said you have to eat, so you want to daven first, so you're kind of davening for the food. Better to eat and then daven than to daven for the food. So you have to also, in depending on your situation, definitely not to fast, or if you can't, then davening in an inappropriate way because you're rushing because you want to eat.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Absolutely. Let's do the footnotes on this. Rebecca, your hand's raised. I'm not sure if you still have another question, but if you do, hold on. The footnotes on here we have, I think it's 48. 48 is it is also forbidden to taste any food, even water, before Kiddush. It is, however, permitted to drink water in the morning before Shachris. So here's the question of when is it forbidden to drink water? Is it the whole day? You have to remember, you're not allowed to fast on Shabbos. So no, you could drink water before Shachris, for the morning, because you are not yet obligated to say Kiddush. Now, a sick person who is permitted to eat and drink before praying should certainly recite the Kiddush before eating. So here is kind of the Bir Halacha is kind of addressing your question, Rebecca, in a background way, where he says, where a person who is sick and is not just going to drink water, and according to the custom that they don't drink before chakras, but that person wants to eat and drink. He doesn't say if the eat and drink is regular foods, meaning not, just solids, but not hamotzi, not bread, or even hamotzi. Doesn't say that in the footnote, but he seems to say that if you're going to eat a proper meal, you should make Kiddush before. It's definitely not the custom. If you're going to do Shachris, then even if you're going to have cereal, or you do not make Kiddush in the morning before the time of Shul. If you're going to daven much later and you want to sit down and have a whole meal and join everyone for lunch and daven later, then of course you should hear Kiddush first. 49 is it's just as in Kiddush night, it's a mitzvah So what we're talking about, before Kiddush, it is forbidden to taste any food in the water, just as before the Kiddush at night. So 49, it says, if you have nothing over which to recite Kiddush at night, but you expect that it will arrive at night, you should wait until midnight for the Kiddush. Means if you're waiting for the wine, some way or another, the wine is going to make its way to you after Shabbos. So could you eat and then make Kiddush? No. Wait until midnight. So says the Chaya Ada in the Mishnah Brura. But for the morning Kiddush, you need not wait. But if you don't have the wine or the bread for that matter, because you can make Kiddush on bread, and you want to eat and you're waiting, you don't have to wait. So that's the difference between day and night. Next thing is, he says, it's preferred whiskey to say Kiddush. It is also, if you prefer the whiskey to say Kiddush over it, you also fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush. It's 50, he says. The Chai Ada Mishnah Brura rule that it is even permitted initially to make Kiddush on whiskey or alcohol, provided that the whiskey is drunk daily by most people. Okay, it has to be not something that's out of the ordinary. But you should be careful to have a revius. Okay. He says 52 is, he says, and you should drink the cheek without interruption. He says this is the opinion of the Magen Avram and the Chassam Sofer. Again, there a lot, and again, if you're going to go to a Kiddush club, that's not the custom. People drink a shot glass. They make sure the shot glass is full, but it's a shot glass, not a revius. And some people sip. The basis for it seems from this article from the YU Torah Online is the idea of the Taz that says that unless than a revius of alcohol, you still make a bracha chreina because that's how it's drunk, and that's the way one drinks it. No one drinks a shot glass of water. You drink a glass of water, but people have a shot glass of whiskey. Yes, Aaron.
I don't regularly drink whiskey, but on Shabbos I do. But the rabbi makes the Kiddush on a shot of whiskey for the whole shul. And then if you want to participate, you participate. But you said you shouldn't if it's not a daily drinking.
No, it doesn't say daily. If it's not a regular custom for people to drink, but they're not talking about daily. It doesn't have to be daily. You don't have to, God forbid, drink every day. We're talking
I
about
only drink on holidays and Shabbos.
If it's a normal, if that's called daily. That's what it means, regular.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to actually stop here and open up the questions because this starts the next subject of Kiddush b'Makom Suda. Any other questions that we have before we finish to complete this class? If there are no questions, then let's just do one more law. Okay, Ben B'Layla, Ben B'Yom. Oh, Rebecca, you had a question?
Yeah, I know it's like a little bit beyond the scope of what you're talking about, but I'm just wondering how, if any halacha of Shabbos is impacted by like the upcoming like Shabbos going into the first days of Pesach.
So we discussed this a few times, but I mean, if you want to go over this before we complete the class, some of the customs. Friday night is regular. Again, we burn and sell the chametz on Friday before the time. You have to nullify the chametz and all that. But we still have chametz because we're allowed to eat chametz, and everyone has to check their calendar where they're located and find the zmanim of the last time you could eat chametz, which is sometime anywhere, depending what hemisphere you're in, but around 10:30 or so. Again, I'm not giving exact times because if you're in New York, it's different than Seattle, it's different than Yerushalayim, places. So check your calendar, and there's plenty of ways to do that, or check your shul calendar. But Friday night surely is the whole Friday night you could have chametz. The problem is that the chametz is your house is ready kosher for Pesach. So people try to find a small roll or something, best is maybe even a pita or a lafa, something that doesn't make crumbs. Eat it in a place that you could secure. You can't, by then already you've turned over your house, so your utensils are either disposable or Pesach utensils. So anything that's Pesach, it's going to come the chametz. You can't mix it, or the tablecloth. So all these things have to be. So you either just a kazayis or a kibetza of we're going to learn it's a kibetza on Shabbos. You have to get a kibetza of challah, and then you brush yourself off and you go to the meal. Shabbos day again, you have to have the chametz before 10 something, whatever that time is, 10 something. So by then you have to be davened, and you have to also have make kiddush, and then you don't have to eat your whole meal. Then you could eat challah, which is the main part of the meal, and you could decide if you want to have fish, chicken, what have you, which don't at a different time or at the same time. That's obviously each family has that discussion, and it's an ongoing discussion still in my household. I'm ready to eat the full meal at 10:30. Others are not. But today most people will be davening early this coming Shabbos. As far as eating foods on Shabbos, there's no pro. I checked yesterday. Yeah, I have a strong custom. It's a Chassidish custom, a Jewish custom to have eggs on Shabbos. This is the idea of eggs and onion on Shabbos. So we don't we try to refrain from eating foods from the Seder plate on Shabbos on Erev Pesach. So I checked the halacha. I just want to check again. I checked the halacha with my brother-in-law Rabbi Farkash from Bellevue, and he said like this, that the only things you definitely should not eat from on Friday, on Shabbos day, is moror and charaises. So anything that you have moror and charaises, do not eat. I didn't ask him, but I'm assuming because we also use lettuce as our moror, maybe one should not have a lettuce salad Shabbos day, because you're going to be eating the lettuce as the moror. And he says eating potato or onion, which could be what you put on the karpas, is not a problem. And so too, you could eat the egg. The egg is also on the kaira, right? We have an egg on the kaira on the Seder plate, also not a problem to eat. He says in the covered Shabbos, not a problem. Even if one want to have lamb, I don't know. I'm not sure. I have to check on that one if one could have lamb on Shabbos day, because it's the time of the Korban Pesach and it's lamb. So maybe better not to. But either way, my brother-in-law says you could eat lamb Shabbos day, which is the 14th. So I guess if he's the rabbi, these things. So in all things. So that's what he ruled. So that's basically what we have to know for coming in Shabbos, but you have to be complete the bread eating before 10:30.
Can I ask another question?
Sure, go ahead.
At the Seder, is it halacha that your meat or chicken has to be like in a sauce and can't be like grilled or roasted, or is it halacha or a minhag?
You have to be careful because you definitely can't have roasted lamb on.
What about chicken?
So yeah, no. What do you mean by roasted? Like you have to remember the roasting of the Korban Pesach was done like spit roasting. It wasn't in a pan, open pan in the oven. So to have regular chicken is okay. To have broiled chicken, we wouldn't eat the broiled chicken. Like for instance, it's our custom in Chabad, the part that we put on the Seder plate, we don't just cook it, let's say the neck, we also broil it, but we don't eat it until the second day. But
you could eat like roasted chicken, because I thought it had to be like in a sauce, like that it's not supposed to be roasted or grilled, like without sauce.
I'm not sure it has to be. I mean, listen, if you can have it just plain chicken without anything on it, but if you're going to put an orange or something, so I don't think sauce means a thick sauce. It means we just try to avoid proper broiling things. If you're going to just if you're going to go to the stores that have those chickens on a spit, that maybe you would avoid. But to have just regular chicken
that was roasted in the oven is okay.
That would be okay if you especially if you have an orange or something on it. Yes.
And are you supposed to have in mind like I'm not eating the Korban Pesach or something?
You definitely don't have in mind that it is the Korban Pesach.
Right, but do you have to have in mind that it's not the Korban Pesach?
You don't want to play with your mind that way. When you think.
Okay, got it.
I think so.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, just to talk a few things about what she said. So
her name is Rebecca.
Rebecca, sorry, I'm bad with names. Okay, so the custom in our house, I guess, this doesn't really happen so often, that Saturday, but a lot of rabbis say eat a pita because it does You can finish one pita. It's a whole contained bread and it doesn't crumble. And so you don't have that problem. It easily doesn't make the mess like a roll or challah does. Number two is she's talking about eating things that aren't roasted. In my family, we eat everything, but the lamb can't be eaten roasted. So what you do is you put it in liquid and they eat it at the end of the Seder, the end of the meal, along with the egg at the same time. That's a Syrian custom. I'm Ashkenaz. I don't care. It's more delicious food. And the first time I had it, I saw it. I'm like, I can't eat that. It's been roasted. She says, don't worry. We don't eat roasted either. We put it in a serious amount of liquid to make sure it's not the Korban Pesach.
Excellent. Well, the truth is, we're gonna be zocha to have. We still have time. There's plenty of sheep in the Judinian hills. So if Mashiach hopefully comes before Shabbos, we will be able to eat the Korban Pesach the way it should be eaten.
Maybe
All
you
right,
should sing the Chabad song before we leave so we can bring him on.
We want Mashiach now.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure, go ahead.
You can't do anything at all to prepare for the Seder until Shabbos is over. Is that correct?
Absolutely. You can't set the table, you can't do anything. That's why I was actually telling my son last night that we have to eat the afikomen. We don't eat the afikomen past the first night, past midnight, chatzos. So you have to check again the time. I think someone said
It's 1 in the morning here. In New York, it's 1 in the morning.
In Yerushalayim, it's 12:40. I think someone sent the times. And if you think about it, Shabbos is also where the sun so if Shabbos is out, I don't know, not 7:45 or so, 8 o'clock. So then you have to light Shabbos candles first, the Yom Tov candles. You can't prepare your Yom Tov candles obviously before. That's muksa. So you set up your Yom Tov candles, light your Yom Tov candles. Say the Shechianu and the brachas you have to make. And then you could only start preparing, setting the table, making the salads, making the things that are needed for the Seder. Anything that's preparation cannot be done. So you have to pencil in. Don't get overwhelmed and stressed because everyone wants the kids to ask the questions or to be part of it. This is the way this is part of Pesach. It takes time. It's not like a regular. It's more complicated this year. So just be patient, prepare your Seder, and better go into the Seder in a good mood than to be pressured on time and then just everyone stressed out. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Chag Kosher v'Sameach. I hope everyone has a place for the Seder and try to make sure you have the 4 cups and the 7 and the 3 matzahs, and to think about our brothers and sisters that are not going to have the opportunity, whether it's because they don't know to go to a Seder, or worse, is our brothers and sisters in Gaza that are not going to be able to, unless miraculous and chas v'shalom, it shouldn't happen that they're not released. But if God forbid, for whatever reason, they're still in gullus, in their captivity, that don't just think about your own Seder, think about their freedom, think about when you eat the matzah, think about them. I mean, that's the idea that you should have them in mind when you eat the matzah, that they're also should be part of the story of Pesach. And we shouldn't come to that. It should be everyone, all the Jewish people should be free. And that should happen also with Mashiach. If we're already having freedom, let's have the ultimate freedom. Laila Tov, everyone, and good Yom Tov.
Thank you so much for going through all of this with us. I really appreciate it.